In this case, like if you hover your mouse, you will see that it is also highlighting the element right here. So I see the success message and I see the class and it says thanks, which implies that this should be quite unique. And if the form is submitted incorrectly, then another message will appear that has the class error. So in general, we could say that we can count successful form submissions if the message appears and its class is thanks. And to do that, we can use the element visibility trigger. If the element appears and it has a particular class, we will fire our tag. So let's go to Google Tag Manager and create a trigger. In the trigger section, click New, Trigger Configuration, and then Element Visibility. And here we have to select a particular element. There are two methods. One is ID, but in our case, the element does not have an ID. There is nothing related to the ID. We just have class. So the ID selection method will not work. That's where we will go a bit more advanced. We will need to select CSS selector. CSS selectors are like rules that you can write with a certain syntax and then pick.
Probably should give you guys a little bit of context. So basically, I'm going through different types of form submit tracking that I can use. This is Analytics Mania. Big shout out to Julius. I'm going to send you guys up a link just in case you want to check out Analytics Mania. I've got an affiliate resource page basically that walks through all the different courses that I've used. So look out for that. That's coming very, very soon. For now, I'm going to just give you guys the resource page, and it looks something like, I'll just jump over to it real quick. 1 second. Is it? Share this tab. So it looks like that. I can just drop this in StreamYard. One moment. There's that. Probably need to come up with a cleaner way to do this, but you know, starting somewhere. Okay, cool. Then I'll flip back here, share this tabs, and I stopped sharing, damn it. Share this and share the audio.
Certain elements on the page. If you want to learn much more, go take a look at my intermediate/advanced Google Tag Manager course. In there, I have a separate module dedicated just to CSS selectors. But in this case, we will take something basic. So we want to track an element of which class is thanks. So you can copy this class and you can paste it right here. But if you enter just like this, Google Tag Manager will not know what this is. Is this ID? Is this class? Is this something else? So in CSS, if you want to tell that this particular word is class, you have to enter a dot in front of it. So dot thanks means the class thanks. Now, in this case, we want to fire this master page. And then I don't care if the element appears like fully on the screen. I just want to catch the fact as soon as possible that the form was submitted. That's why it's okay to enter just 1%. But if I see even a tiny corner of that message, I want to count this as a form submission. Now, we don't need the minimum on-screen duration. I want to catch that as soon as that happens. But here's one catch. This element appears not because of scrolling. It just appears out of nowhere. It just becomes visible when I submit the form. That's why we need to enable this checkbox, Observe DOM Changes. DOM is basically what is generated on this page based on the HTML of the website. So if anything in the DOM changes, Google Tag Manager will check that. And if that change involves an element appearing and that element's class is thanks, then this trigger will fire. We don't need to.
So this is really good for, I don't know if you guys have ever noticed when you're on the site and you fill out a form and instead of it sending you to like a thank you page where the actual URL switches, they just have something that flashes, a message that flashes and it says thank you for submitting. And then maybe sometimes, you know, I've got clients where it'll flip right back to a form at that point. Some, you know, simpler websites are kind of built that way. So this kind of is a workaround for that situation to where you can still capture that a form was submitted. I'll be using this observe DOM change. I also have a situation that I was talking about yesterday, and I can show you guys that as well real quick. So on Tag Manager, I had this form visible. Let me share this. Form visible 10 seconds. So this is an idea where it's like, I don't necessarily want to track some of the auto events. So form start, form fill, and then form submit. I'm not sure if that's the order that they go in, but we can look real quick. Form interactions. Let's see what GA4 form interactions are. See if I can find a support document. Here we go. So it looks like they're only tracking, auto tracking form start and form submit. Form start comes in handy whenever someone's, starting the form, but they are not necessarily submitting it. You have to be pretty smart about this, though. If you just want to track the people who have a form start event, you probably want to exclude the people who have a form submit, because every form submit will have a form start, but not all form starts have a form submit. So what I did with the client is I just tracked their form start and then sent them over a list of people who started the form, but they didn't submit. And I can show you an example of that. I'll just build this real quick and show you how to build it. So if I just wanted an, they don't have it, but let's do this. So I can have a form start event. So include users when they have a form start event, and then I can add different parameters if I wanted to specify, like form ID, destination, URL, stuff like that, right? I don't need that in this case. And then I can exclude. This is how you would use this. You would want to use people who have a form submit, right? So if they have a form submit, I don't necessarily want to include them in this group with form starts, because I'm going to retarget to this group. And then I can call this and then it was 30 days. You probably want to switch this up and everything. Let's go back. Let me clean this up real quick. 1 second. So instead of 30 days, I usually would pick set to maximum. This is just an example. And then I can put an audience trigger. I like to start mine with AT. So this is just me telling myself, hey, audience trigger for form start. And that's what I'm doing here. And then I can log an additional event each time the membership refreshes. This matters whenever you have a limitation on membership duration, like I do here. If I were to set it the way I usually set it, which is set to maximum, I wouldn't necessarily want to log this event each time someone re-entered this audience. But in this case, it makes a lot of sense. So then not only will I see this fire in my stack, so here in the events, I'm going to see those pop up here. And then obviously the purchase is a conversion event. A form submit would be an actual conversion event, and everything leading up to those main North Stars. I like to talk about them as if they're North Stars. These would just be, in support of the overall goal. All right, anyways.
Here, because we are pretty specific already in this element selector field. Now let's name this trigger, for example, visibility and newsletter form, something like that. Click save. Now let's test if this is working. Click preview. Once the preview mode is connected, let's go to the site and submit the form again. By the way, if this sometimes blocks some elements, you can just drag and drop it somewhere else, or you can minimize it. But don't click finish, because this will close the preview mode. Then click checkbox, sign up now, and we see the success message. Now let's go to the preview mode, and voila, we see the element visibility. And this has happened because our trigger was configured properly. In fact, we can try another experiment. We can submit the form incorrectly, and I'm not sure actually what will happen with this form, so we can check. I can click sign up now. All right, so
this is great right here.
like this, still not correct.
So imagine a situation where you can track when the form was used, but there was an error that came back.
So in this case, it looks like we don't have any other elements.
Really good for troubleshooting for bot attacks. If it's really a CRO tool to an extent. If people are hitting your form, but they're not filling it out correctly and they're getting error messages, maybe you need to simplify your form or something, or at least redesign it or something, right?
Element visibility events, which means that we have tested both scenarios, positive and negative, and our trigger fires only on the positive scenario. So the last step is to create a tag. Let's go to tags, new tag configuration, then GA4 event, and then GA4 config. And here we can enter form submission. Then let's add an event parameter, add row, and it could be form ID. But since we don't have any form ID, I think, let me check. So on element visibility, I can go to variables and I see nothing related to ID. So click ID is empty. That's why I will just enter newsletter or something like that, or newsletter sidebar, because that's on the sidebar. And yeah, that's it. Now let's go to triggering and add our visibility trigger. And finally, let's name this tag.
So what he was talking about right here is naming that.
And yeah, that's it.
So you can name it. This is hard coded. So every time that this pops up, it'll just say newsletter sidebar. If this form submission event fires, the form ID will be newsletter sidebar. That's not necessarily true. You usually want to use a variable so that you can dynamically fill in that value field based on what the form ID is giving us back. But if his form ID is just undefined and it's not giving anything back, this is kind of a moot point. However, you can manipulate the data layer and some other things in order to get a proper form ID put in. Obviously, we can help with that. Fixyourtracking.com.
That's it. Now let's go to triggering and add our visibility trigger. And finally, let's name this tag. Now let's save the tag and let's test everything. Once the preview mode is connected, let's go to the site and submit the form once again. And in the preview mode, I see the element visibility. I see the tag has fired. And here's our form ID. And as always, let's go to the debug view in GE4, close this. And since in this case, we're working yet on another domain, we should click here and select another device. And here's that event from submission, and form ID is this one. And that's how you can track forms with the element visibility trigger. As always, if this was a normal project, then your next step would be to publish your changes by clicking the submit button.
Yes, sir. Pretty straightforward. Hope Julius doesn't hate me for sharing some of these lessons.
Let's go to our samples website, the regular one, which is GTM course.
The idea here is that you sign up.
That just has the field and click to subscribe.
Analytics Mania.
As always, let's go to Google Tag Manager. If you have open preview mode from the previous lessons, close those tabs and then start again. So click preview, then enter the URL of this page. Click connect, and then eventually the preview mode will connect. So now I will enter anything, click subscribe, and let's see what happens. So we don't have any form submission events, so that trigger will not help. Then the page reloaded, the URL changed, but let's see that this URL is too generic and it does not help us distinguish whether this form was successfully submitted or not. So thank you page tracking will not work. The next step is Ajax form tracking. And here in the preview mode, we don't see anything about Ajax, so that is also not working. Here we see the success message. If I do the right click and inspect, this is just a regular text. There are no classes, no IDs that would clearly help us distinguish regular text from a success message. I would highly recommend not creating triggers based on element text, like click text or just text, whatever, because visitors can use translations in browsers. If they do that, your text triggers will break. So always avoid using text.
Interesting.
Also, if the website is often updated, your A/B testing platform might change the text. Maybe your marketing team can change the text. And in all those cases, your text-based triggers will break. That's why always keep looking for things like classes or IDs. And in this case, we just have class RTE, which sounds way too generic. And I think that more elements on the page might have this class. So element visibility is also off the table. So in this case, so far, we got just negative answers in all the steps of our flow. The last chance, if none of these methods work, is to cooperate with a developer. If there is a developer that has built that website and you can contact him or her, then you will need to ask the developer to push data to the data layer when the form is successfully submitted. So I hope that you remember the drill. First, you go to Google search, then you enter data layer push examples, then you can find my guide and take this sample snippet right here. You can copy it and then open some plain text editor. Again, a reminder, don't use Word, don't use Google Docs or other rich text editors. You need to use the plain text editor that does not allow to add any formatting. So I'm using Notepad++. Here is the code that I copied, and here I can leave this event name as it is, or I can change it to something else, like email subscriber, and then I can also add, let's say, form name, and that form could be newsletter form. So in this case, you could then send this code snippet to the developer and tell the developer that this kind of code should be activated only after a successful form submission. If you have multiple forms on the page, then you could tell the developer that this part right here should be dynamically replaced. So it means that a developer must write some code that will automatically pick the correct form name of that particular form that was submitted. But in our case, we just have one form, so in this case, the developer is lucky. Copy pasting the code would work. So once you prepare this, you save the file, you send an email to the developer, and then after a while, the developer replies that this task is complete. Now you should check that. To do that, the process is like this.
If you don't have a developer and you have a WordPress site, use the GTM 4WP plugin, or just have us do it for you. Really, all you have to do is drop that data layer push piece of code above the GTM container.
You go to the form and then you submit the form. click subscribe to updates, and then you go to the preview mode, and then you should expect an email subscriber event, because that's the event that was included in your data layer push example. And here is the event, here's the form name. We also have some value, but in our case, this is not needed. What we need is form name and also the event. So this is good. Like normally, you would also need to check the negative scenario, but I was lazy doing this. So in this case, the form will always show the success message, even if you leave the form fields empty like that. So just keep that in mind. But in real projects, the email subscriber event should fire only if the form was actually successfully submitted. So I have that email subscriber event here. So based on the BHT framework, first we have to create a variable. So we go to Google Tag Manager, variables, and check maybe you already have form name variable. But in my case, I don't. So I will click new, variable configuration, and then data layer variable. Here I will enter form_name exactly like here. So I will do this, and then I will name this variable. Click save. Then the next step, according to the framework, is to create the trigger. So event and this one. Let's go to Google Tag Manager, triggers, new, trigger configuration, and then select custom event. Here we are going to paste the event
And you
name
put the event name
without any.
Nice.
So do like that, and then name this
Clean.
Finally, let's save this. And the final step of our DBT framework is the tag. So click tags. So in tags, click new, tag configuration, GA4 event.
Make an event based on that trigger, custom trigger.
And the event parameter could be, again, form ID, and its value could be our data variable, which is form name. But if you want, you can send form name here. But I think in that case, you will need to register form name as a custom dimension. Then in the triggering.
The cool thing about data layer push is he could also add, for the event parameters, he can add everything that was in that previous push.
Click anywhere and then select custom email subscriber. Now let's name this tag. And
data layer variable push.
Test everything. So click preview.
Data layer
Let's
push.
go to the site and submit the form. Click subscribe to updates. Here's the success message. And in the preview mode, we have email subscriber. Our tag has fired. And here's the data. Now let's go to.
So you see where these parameters name. Actually, I was trying to look at the push. Hold on. Let's see if we can get to the push.
And let's check if we got anything. Preview mode has data layer variable, which is form name. Variables, and check maybe you already have form name variable, but in my case, new, trigger to this trigger. Finally, let's end this one. Let's go to Google Tag Manager, triggers,
okay.
Create the trigger.
So this right here, where it says form name and it has value, you could also add other things to the data layer variable, and you can actually, since it's getting pushed and he's using this for a custom event, email subscriber, just as a name, event name, you can also add form name to your GA4 situation. So the GA4 event parameter can include form name as well as value. And that would look something like this, just to overly simplify. So this is an event. Let's say that I also wanted to, let me see, one moment. Email subscriber is what it's called. So I forget the name of the case. Camel case actually is what he's using here. And then I can go form name like this. I can go value. I could go form URL. I can go form ID, right? You can add all these things in here, and there's even a ton of built-in variables here. So any of these could be added on the left side, on the right side as well. So clearly there's not one for name. So this would be a custom situation, and that usually looks like this. So I could go form name like that, pull that in. Then we could say this is a data layer variable, and it will look like that. And then this is value. I think there's a value. No? So whatever that value is, how much is it worth? I'm not about to do this right now. Based on what you want it to be, you can change it. It's not really like too important that we do that right now. I can go total. Let's just go here. Let me create one. I could say a value is usually going to be monetary. Form quality value. I don't know, bro. I'm trying to think of a smart way to do that. So sometimes I've had a client in the past, so they had what was called form submit lobsters and crabs. So a lobster is someone who's worth larger than 6 employees, and then a crab was less than 6 employees. And so that was a way to know how big of a potential client that person was. So this would be something similar. So you can go for quality or quantity value. I don't know. Whatever. Anyways, there's a way to define it. This isn't form visible. This would be email subscriber. I'm going to cancel all this anyways. But for illustration purposes, it would look like this. GA4 event, and I would call it email subscriber. So then whenever that data layer push comes in here, it would trigger all this. Also, the trigger itself obviously would not be the form submit in this way. It would look something more like this to match custom event. And then I can go email subscriber like that. And then I can have that be custom event trigger. Boom. And then save. And I didn't show you any of that. Holy crap, my bad. I suck at streaming, guys. This is what I did on my side. So GA4 event, subscriber, we can add all these parameter values in addition to what you saw on Analytics Mania. So form name, I would have to create a custom, capture field for a data layer variable. And then same for value. So I just call this form quality, or you could call it form quantity. You can call it whatever you want to. You just want to try to make it somewhat uniform so you don't forget, because I've done that before. This is a built-in variable. So form URL, form ID is also a built-in variable, and all that's available to you, right? As you do this. And then user properties, there's going to be user properties that are available to you. There's going to be, you can send e-commerce data depending on your sophistication and your ability. You can add all this to a GA4 event before it hits GA4, and that's why GTM is so powerful. All right, I'm not saving that, but I will jump back over here and let's
event and
close this out, and then I'm gonna call it good for today.
Here we are going to paste the event name from here without any quotation marks. So do like that, and then name this trigger. Finally, let's save this. And the final step of our BHT framework is the tag. So click tags. So in tags, click new, tag configuration, GA4 event, then select the configuration tag, and then let's name this event form submission. And the event parameter could be, again, form ID, and its value could be our particular variable, which is form name. But if you want, you can send form name here. But I think in that case, you will need to register form name as a custom dimension. Then in the triggering, click anywhere, and then select custom email subscriber. Now let's name this tag, and then click save. Let's test everything. So click preview. Preview mode has connected. Let's go to the site and submit the form. Click subscribe to updates. Here's the success message. And in the preview mode, we have email subscriber. Our tag has fired. And here's the data. Now let's go to the debug view and let's check if we got anything. I think we'll switch to the device again. And here's that.
Excuse me.
And form ID is newsletter form. So everything is working properly.
All right, so that's it. Just kind of wanted to show you guys a little bit of me going back through some training, old training, brushing up on basics, and giving you a real life example of what it looks like to build these little systems out. Always, you can visit fixyourtracking.com in order to schedule time with me. Also have playbooks available if you're do-it-yourself type. Just hit me up. All right, peace.